Hello, hello, and a very warm welcome to the Easy English podcast. I am Hana, and as always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Alex. How are you today, Alex?
Hi, Hana. I am doing great, thank you. And a huge welcome to all our amazing listeners joining us from all around the world today. I am really excited about our topic.
Me too. Today, we are looking at two small words that cause a lot of big headaches for English learners, will and would. They look so similar, but they do completely different jobs in a sentence.
They really do. And you know, Hana, I often hear learners mix them up. They might say something like, if I win the lottery, I will buy a boat, which is fine. But then they say, if I won the lottery, I will buy a boat. And that is where the confusion starts.
Yes, the famous lottery example. That actually brings us right to the main difference. Let us make it super simple right from the start. We use will for real future plans, things we actually think are going to happen. And we use would for imaginary scenarios, things that are not real, or for being extra polite.
Perfect. Let's break that down with an everyday example. Imagine you're planning your weekend. If you look at the weather forecast and it says 100% sunshine, you say, it is going to be hot, so I will go to the beach on Saturday. This is a real plan.
Right. I have the beach towel ready. The sunscreen is in my bag. I will go to the beach. It is real and in the future.
Exactly. But now let's imagine it is currently raining heavily outside. It looks like it will rain all weekend. You're sitting on your sofa, looking out the window, and you say, if it were sunny, I would go to the beach.
I see. I am not actually going to the beach because it is raining. I am just imagining a different, happier reality. I would go to the beach if the weather were different, but it is not.
Spot on. That is the core difference. Will is for the real world and real future intentions. Would is for the world of imagination, dreams, and what-if situations.
That is a great way to put it. The world of what if. Let us practice this a bit. I will say a sentence, and you tell me if it is a real plan with will or an imaginary one with would. Ready?
I am always ready, Hana. Let's do it.
Okay, first one. If I have time tonight, I will call my mom.
That is will, so it is a real possibility. You think you will probably have time, and your plan is to call her. It is very likely to happen.
Correct. Now, how about this one? If I had a spaceship, I would fly to Mars.
Well, unless you have a secret space program we don't know about, Hana, that is definitely imaginary. You do not have a spaceship, so you use would. I would fly to Mars. It's a dream.
Exactly. No spaceship for me yet, unfortunately. So, would is for things that are not real right now. But, Alex, I often hear people use would in restaurants. They say, I would like a coffee, please. Is that imaginary coffee?
No, thank goodness. That coffee is very real, or at least you want it to be real very soon. This is the second major use of would. We use would to be polite.
Polite. Yes, instead of saying, I want a coffee, which can sound a bit rude or demanding, we say, I would like a coffee.
Exactly. I want is very direct. Children say, I want. But as adults, we soften our language. I would like is the polite version of I want. In fact, we usually shorten it when we speak. We say, I'd like a coffee, please.
I'd like. Yes, that D sound is just would hiding in the sentence. Let's practice saying that. I'd like. I'd like a glass of water. I'd like to ask a question. It sounds much more natural and friendly.
It really does. And you can use it with will too, but in a different way. If you are ordering food, you can say, I'll have the pasta, please. Here, I'll is short for I will. It is a decision you are making right at that moment.
Ooh, that is a very important point. Let us talk about that. We use will when we make a decision at the moment of speaking. For example, the phone rings, and I say, I'll get it. I didn't plan to answer the phone 5 minutes ago, but I decided just now.
Perfect example. Or if you see someone struggling with a heavy suitcase, you don't sit there planning it. You just stand up and say, I'll help you with that. It is an instant decision.
By the way, if you are enjoying this episode and finding it useful, taking a second to like this video or subscribe to our channel really helps us reach more English learners around the world.
Yes, and please leave any grammar questions in the comments as we read and answer all of them. Anyway, back to our topic. Let's look at how we use these words for politeness.
Right. We would not say, I would help you with that in that moment. Because would makes it sound like there is a catch, like, I would help you, but I am too lazy.
Exactly. That is actually another common mistake. If you say, I would help you, the other person is waiting for the word but. I would help you, but I have a bad back. If you actually want to help them right now, you say, I will help you, or I'll help you.
That is a brilliant distinction. Will means action. It means I am doing this now or in the future. Would often means I want to do this, but I cannot because of a reason.
Yes, it creates a condition. That is why teachers call these conditional sentences. But we don't need to worry about heavy grammar terms. Just think of would as the bridge to a condition.
An imaginary result. For example, if I want $1 million, that is the condition, the imaginary starting point. I would buy a big house. That is the result on the other side of the bridge.
Perfect. And if we look at will on that same bridge, if it rains tomorrow, which is a real possibility, I will stay at home. The starting point is real, so the result uses will.
This makes so much sense. So let me see if I have this straight. Will is for real, likely things and instant decisions. Would is for imaginary, unlikely things and polite requests.
You nailed it, Hana. That is the perfect summary. Of course, there are a couple of other small ways we use them, but if our listeners can master this main difference, they will avoid 90% of the mistakes people usually make.
Speaking of those mistakes, I want to talk about something I hear a lot. Many of my friends who are learning English mix up these two words when they are talking about the past. They say things like, yesterday, my sister said she will come to my house. It sounds almost right, but my ears always tell me something is a bit off there. Is that a common mistake?
It is incredibly common, Hannah. In fact, it is probably the #1 mistake with these two words. When we are reporting what someone said in the past, we have to take a step back in time. We call this reported speech in grammar books, but let's make it simple. If my sister says to me on Tuesday, I will help you, those are her exact words. She is looking at the future. But if I tell you about this conversation on Thursday, I have to say, my sister said she would help me.
Ah, so would is actually the past tense of will in these kinds of sentences?
Exactly. Would is the past form of will. Think of it as a time shift. If the main verb of your sentence is in the past, like she said, he told me, we thought, then will must shift to would. Let me give you another quick contrast. If I think today, I will buy a new car, that is my active thought right now. But if I talk about last year, I say, last year, I thought I would buy a new car, but I didn't have enough money.
That is a great example. So I thought I would instead of I thought I will. Let me try one to see if I get it. If I want to say what my boss promised last week, I should say, my boss promised he would give me a promotion. Is that correct?
Spot on. Because the promise happened last week. My boss promised is in the past, so we use would. If you said, my boss promised he will, it confuses the timeline. It mixes past and future in a way that sounds unnatural to native speakers.
That makes total sense. What about when we are talking about old habits? I often hear people say things like, when I was a child, we would go to the beach every summer. Now, that doesn't sound like an imaginary situation at all. It actually happened. Why do we use would there?
I am so glad you brought this up. This is another very special and very beautiful use of would. We use it to talk about past habits or repeated actions in the past. It is very similar to saying used to. So, when I was a child, we would go to the beach means the same thing as we used to go to the beach. It paints a nostalgic picture of the past.
Nostalgic. That is a lovely word. It means feeling a happy, slightly sad affection for the past, right?
Exactly. And would is perfect for that. For example, every Sunday my grandfather would wake up early and make pancakes for the whole family. This isn't imaginary. It really happened many times in the past. But here is the trick, Hana. We cannot use will for this. If you say, when I was young, we will go to the beach, that is a major grammar error because will can never look backward into the past like that.
Right. Because will is firmly planted in the present or looking forward to the future. It cannot travel back in time. Only would can do that. That is a great way to visualize it. Will is a forward-facing arrow. Would has the power to look backward or into a dream world.
I love that image of a forward-facing arrow. Let's write that down. Will is an arrow pointing straight ahead. Would is a flexible arrow that can point to a dream, a polite request, or back into the past.
So let's do a quick comparison to help our listeners really feel the difference between these two arrows. I will give you a sentence with will, and you change it to would, and explain how the meaning changes. Ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Okay, first one. I will help you with your homework.
That is a direct promise about the future. I am saying I am going to do it. Now, if I change it to would, I could say, I would help you with your homework, but I have to go to work now. Here, would shows that I want to help, but a real obstacle is stopping me. It is conditional.
Perfect. Let's try another one. She will call you later.
This is a prediction or a statement of fact about the future. We are sure it is going to happen. If we change it to would, we could say, she said she would call you later. This is the past reporting we just talked about. The phone call was promised in the past, so we use would to report it.
Wow, this is becoming so clear. Let's do one more. This one is about decisions. I will have the chocolate cake, please.
That is an instant decision made at a restaurant. You are looking at the menu and choosing right now. If we use would, we say, I would have the chocolate cake, but I am on a diet. Or we can use it to make a polite order. I would like the chocolate cake, please. And the polite version, would like, is just a softer, nicer way of saying I want.
Oh, I would like is such an important phrase for English learners. It is so much more polite than I want. If you go into a coffee shop and say, I want a coffee, it can sound a bit rude or demanding. But if you say, I would like a coffee, please, it sounds incredibly polite and friendly.
It really does. It makes a huge difference in how people respond to you. I would like, or the short version, I'd like, is the perfect phrase for ordering food, asking for help, or buying tickets. I'd like 2 tickets for the movie, please. It is gentle and respectful.
And I'd is the contraction of I would, correct? It can be a bit hard to pronounce for some learners because of that D sound at the end. I'd.
Yes, it is just a very quick, soft D sound at the back of your mouth. I'd. Let's practice that. I'd like a glass of water. I'd love to come to your party. It is much more common in spoken English than saying, I would, all the time. Native speakers love contractions because they make speech flow faster.
It really does flow better. I'd like is definitely a phrase I use daily. But Alex, what about when we are talking about the past? I often hear people use would when they are talking about things they used to do. How does that work? And how is it different from will?
That is a brilliant question, Hana. This is actually one of the most beautiful uses of would. We use would to talk about past habits, things we did regularly in the past, but we do not do now. For example, when I was a kid, I would ride my bike every single day after school. It means the same thing as I used to ride my bike. We cannot use will here because will looks forward to the future, not back at the past.
Ah, I see. So will is for present decisions or future plans, but would can be like a time machine, taking us back to our childhood habits. Can we say, when I was young, I will play with dolls?
No, that is a very common mistake, but it is incorrect. Because when I was young is clearly in the past, will sounds completely wrong there. You must use would or used to. So when I was young, I would play with dolls. It gives a very warm, nostalgic feeling to the sentence.
Nostalgic. That means looking back at the past with happy, slightly sad, or warm feelings, right?
Exactly. Nostalgia is that warm feeling we get when we think about the good old days. And would is the perfect grammatical tool for sharing those memories. Every summer, my family would go to the beach. My grandmother would bake the most amazing apple pies every Sunday.
Oh, I love that. It sounds so poetic. So if I want to tell a story about my childhood, I should use would instead of will. Let me try. When I lived in my hometown, I would walk by the river every morning.
Perfect. That is absolutely correct and sounds incredibly natural. You are talking about a past routine. Now, if you wanted to change that to the future, how would you say it with will?
If it is a future plan, I would say, next week, I will walk by the river every morning. Is that right?
Spot on. Next week, I will walk. That is a promise or a firm plan for the future. You see how easily we can switch between the two once we understand the time connection? Will goes forward, would goes backward when we talk about habits.
This is a great mental shortcut. But what about those tricky situations where people are talking about things that might not even happen? You know, the imaginary situations. English learners often get confused here because they don't know whether to say, if I have money, I will buy a car, or if I had money, I would buy a car. Both sound okay to a learner.
They do sound very similar, but they actually carry different meanings about how realistic the situation is. This is what teachers call conditionals, but let us keep it simple. Think of will as the real and possible word, and would as the imaginary or dream word.
Ooh, I like that. Will is real and possible. Would is imaginary or a dream. Let's break that down with the car example.
Great. If you say, if I have enough money next month, I will buy a car, this means it is a real possibility. You have a job, you are saving money, and you are actively planning to buy that car. It is likely to happen.
Okay, so will means I believe this can actually happen in my real life. Now, what about the would version?
If you say, if I won the lottery, I would buy a luxury sports car. You are dreaming. Winning the lottery is highly unlikely. It is an imaginary scenario. So we pair the past tense won with would to show we are playing a game of what if in our minds.
Ah, so would is for the what if world, the world of fantasy, big dreams, or things that are currently impossible. Like, if I were an astronaut, I would fly to Mars.
Exactly. You are not an astronaut, and you are probably not going to Mars anytime soon. It is a pure dream, so would is the only correct choice here. You cannot say, if I am an astronaut, I will fly to Mars, unless you are already in space school preparing for a mission.
I am definitely not in space school, so I would fly to Mars is the winner. Let's give our listeners a quick rule of thumb. A mental shortcut they can use in their heads while speaking so they do not have to stop and think about grammar rules.
Here is the ultimate shortcut. Ask yourself, is this real life or is this a fantasy? If it is real life, a real plan, or a real promise, choose will. I will call you tonight. It will rain tomorrow. I will help you move.
And if it is fantasy, a polite request, a past habit, or a what-if dream, choose would.
You got it. I would love a cup of tea. If I had a superpower, I would fly. When I lived in Spain, I would eat tapas every day. It all fits into that softer, imaginary, or past category.
That is incredibly simple. Real life equals will. Fantasy, politeness, or past habits equal would. I think if our listeners just remember that contrast, their confidence is going to shoot way up.
I agree. And remember, making mistakes is part of the process. If you accidentally say will instead of would, native speakers will still understand you perfectly. But practicing these small differences helps your English sound smoother and more natural.
Speaking of practicing, I think it is time for a little game. Our listeners love interactive practice, and to be honest, I want to see if I can get a perfect score. How about we test each other with some realistic, everyday situations?
I love that idea. Let's do a mini quiz. I will give you a scenario, and you have to choose whether will or would is the correct fit. Listeners, you can play along at home, in the car, or wherever you are listening right now. Try to answer before Hannah does.
Oh, the pressure is on. I am ready, Alex. Hit me with the first scenario.
All right, scenario number 1. You are at a restaurant. The waiter comes to your table and asks, "Are you ready to order?" You want to order the grilled chicken. Do you say, "I will have the grilled chicken," or "I would have the grilled chicken"?
Ooh, this is a classic. Since I am actually in the restaurant and making a real decision about what I want to eat right now, I'm going to say, I will have the grilled chicken. Or, of course, the contraction, I'll have the grilled chicken. Am I right?
Spot on. Yes, I will have or I'll have is the standard way to make a decision at the moment of speaking. But wait, what if you wanted to use would in that same restaurant?
I could say, I would like the grilled chicken, please, because would like is a polite way of saying want.
Exactly. You nailed the distinction. I will have is for the decision, and I would like is the polite request. 1 point for Hannah. Ready for scenario number 2?
Yes. Give me the next one.
Okay, imagine your best friend is moving to a new apartment this weekend. You want to offer your help. Do you tell them, "I will help you carry those boxes on Saturday," or "I would help you carry those boxes on Saturday"?